Welcome back to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Washington is once again in full-blown turmoil, and this time the ripple effects reach deep into global markets, agriculture, and the industries that keep the world turning. President Trump's biggest diplomatic win, China's supposed agreement to sweeping concessions, is falling apart fast. From rare earth access to massive soybean purchases, the promises he celebrated aren't matching the reality now emerging from Beijing. Fresh data, new briefings, and industry reactions reveal cracks widening by the day. Here are the developments. Trump's grand victory unravels. Beijing's silence tells another story. When Trump returned from Busan, he celebrated what he called one of his presidency's biggest diplomatic wins, announcing that China had agreed to nearly every U.S. demand. He claimed Beijing would lift rare earth restrictions, buy massive amounts of U.S. soybeans, ease tech limits, pause retaliatory fees, and cooperate on fentanyl. The administration framed it as a turning point where Washington had regained leverage. But the celebration unraveled quickly. Analysts discovered that many of the commitments Trump touted were missing from China's official statements. Beijing acknowledged only limited tariff pauses and cooperative language, not sweeping concessions. State media avoided soybean quotas, made no mention of broad export licenses, and described the rare earth issue as a temporary suspension, not a reversal. This widening gap alarmed global supply chains. To many experts, China's silence appeared strategic, allowing Trump to claim victory while Beijing kept every critical lever intact. What seemed like a breakthrough increasingly looked like a temporary pause rather than real progress. And nowhere is that gap more evident than in the rare earth dispute itself. Rare earth relief collapses. China's controls still rule everything. Rare earths were showcased as the highlight of Trump's claimed victory, with the president insisting the dispute was settled and that U.S. access to key minerals would be fully restored. But updated reports from AFP, Reuters, and MOFCOM reveal a very different reality. China only suspended its October 9th expansion of export controls, while the far more restrictive April 2025 framework remains fully in place. That system continues to tightly regulate 7 heavy rare earth elements and broaden dual-use classifications, meaning nothing structurally changed. Since China controls about 90% of global processing capacity, the suspension merely stops conditions from worsening in the short term. Aerospace, defense, EV, and semiconductor firms still face long licensing waits and strict compliance requirements. Beijing also kept firm control over separation technologies, preserving its intellectual dominance. Experts now call the suspension a strategic timeout, a temporary gesture that leaves China's leverage untouched. Meanwhile, the U.S. eased rules and tariffs, offering China immediate benefits. The imbalance is clear. The issue wasn't resolved, only delayed. And if rare earths showed a strategic pause, China's soybean response shows an even sharper contrast. Before we push further into this unfolding U.S.-China showdown, tap like and subscribe to keep this engine running. Your support fuels Piston Pundit. All right. Let's change lanes and take a closer look at China's soybean play, where the cracks become even more obvious. Soybean lifeline shattered. China buys symbolism, not supply. Trump's claim that China would purchase 12 million tons of U.S. soybeans before year-end and 25 million tons annually afterward energized Midwest farmers desperate for relief. But updated data tells a different story. Reuters reports China bought only 10 to 15 cargoes, about 600,000 to 900,000 tons, a fraction of the promised amount. These COFCO-led purchases look more like diplomatic signals than genuine commercial demand. China simply doesn't need U.S. soybeans at scale. Reserves are high after record imports from Brazil and Argentina. Crushers face negative margins, soy meal demand is weak, and South American beans remain cheaper even after tariff pauses. This makes the buying pattern tactical, not structural. China never confirmed the long-term volumes cited by U.S. officials, instead using vague language about expanding agricultural trade. Farmers expecting a rebound are seeing little change. Machinery orders are slowing, contracts remain thin, and Brazil's approaching harvest is tightening the window. And just like soybeans, the story behind export controls and port fees shows how temporary the calm truly is. Control battles continue, temporary pauses masquerading as progress. Beyond rare earths and soybeans, Trump emphasized that export controls and port fees had been resolved. But the reality is far more limited. The US and China suspended new port fees for a year, giving shippers short-term relief from rising costs. Yet the frameworks behind those fees remain active and can be reinstated instantly, making the pause little more than surface-level stability. Export controls follow the same pattern. The White House suggested China would issue broad export licenses for strategic materials, but MOFCOM never confirmed this. Instead, China paused its October restrictions and eased a few rules on dual-use items and some battery materials. The strict April regime, governing gallium, germanium, and heavy rare earths, remains intact. Meanwhile, the US softened its own posture by pausing the affiliates rule, reducing tariffs, and extending exemptions, clear benefits for Chinese exporters. Analysts see this as temporary easing rather than genuine alignment. And when these temporary pauses are placed side by side, the long-term consequences become even more clear. Beijing holds the leverage. America's win turns into weakness. 2 weeks after the summit, the true impact is becoming clear, and it tilts heavily toward China. The US received temporary suspensions, symbolic soybean purchases, and diplomatic gestures offering short-term relief but no structural security. China, meanwhile, kept every core advantage. The strict April rare earth controls remain, and Beijing still dominates processing capacity. High soybean reserves give China the freedom to buy only when convenient, and export controls were eased selectively, preserving China's ability to tighten restrictions at any moment. Industries aren't treating the deal as stable. Automakers warn of supply chain vulnerabilities, defense contractors are stockpiling key materials, and farm equipment manufacturers see hesitant buyers. Even shipping firms remain cautious, since the fee frameworks remain active on both sides. China's strategy appears deliberate: relieve immediate pressure while keeping long-term leverage intact. What looked like a breakthrough now resembles temporary calm, masking deep strategic imbalances. Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this entire geopolitical showdown. Verdict: a diplomatic mirage. Calm today, power clash tomorrow. Once examined in full, the Trump-Xi deal looks far less like a breakthrough and far more like a diplomatic mirage, a pause mistaken for progress. What seemed like sweeping victories were reversible gestures. China granted breathing room without surrendering long-term leverage, while the US eased tariffs, paused rules, and softened pressure. This wasn't a collapse or triumph, it was a reset. A short-lived stabilizer in a long geopolitical contest where real power comes from supply chains, strategic control, and economic resilience. Before you go, here are a few questions for you. Do you think this US-China pause will hold, or will tensions flare again? Which industry do you believe is now most exposed? EVs, semiconductors, or agriculture? And does this temporary deal give the US enough time to rebuild supply chain independence? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights help drive the conversation. If you want to stay ahead of these shifts and keep up with the next major automotive and geopolitical developments, make sure you subscribe to Piston Pundit and tap that notification bell so you never miss the next vehicle update or breakdown. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next update. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.